Hi, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Wael Awar, Principal Architect and Founding Partner at Waiwai, a multidisciplinary architecture studio based between Tokyo and Dubai. Wael's work exemplifies the contemporary architecture discourse, blending deep-rooted design principles with forward-thinking sustainable practices. He created the UAE Pavilion at the 2021 Venice Biennale, which he won the Golden Lion for, which is the Biennale highest recognition. Today, Wael will guide us through the unique design philosophy of Waiwai, focusing on how architecture can evolve to embrace sustainability and reimagine the potential of what we consider waste. So please join me in welcoming Wael. Hi, Wael.
Hi, thank you.
Okay.
Well, today I'll start with explaining the 6 design principles that we use at Waiwai and how we benchmark our design and drive the methodology of thinking forward. I'll do that by explaining projects and how these are applied through certain architectural forms in projects. The first principle is cultural and contextual sensitivities. We operate between, Beirut, Dubai, and Tokyo, and it's very important also to see the climate differences between all these 3 different cities. And, I wonder today how architecture can exist in the same form or the same shape in all these 3 different cities, while in the past, 100 years ago, architecture in each city was very unique to the identity, the culture, and the climate of each of these cities. I'll start by explaining the Mosque of Reflection that we designed in Dubai. And we started by investigating the different mosque typologies. There are 4 predominant typologies of mosques: the Arab hypostyle, and then the Persian 4-Liwan type, the Indian 3-dome typology, and finally the Turkish central dome typology. What we wanted to do was really return to the Arab hypostyle typology, because today the mosques that you see built are not true to a singular typology or identity, but have a mixture of different identities that are blended together to create weird forms. But what's important is that the Arab hypostyle typology was really, the mosque was a community center.
Yeah.
It was open to the people, etc. You can see here the riwaq is open to the city. There's no boundary wall. People can walk through and in. And the garden and the space around the mosque is used by the community that's around the mosque itself. And as I was telling you earlier, the imam calls me sometimes screaming that there are kids riding their bicycles in the riwaq of the mosque, and and he's blaming me as an architect for allowing that to happen. And then I answer by saying, please take pictures and send them to me.
Yeah.
That must be wonderful. So here, you can see how we think about projects in different contexts. Here I move to the context of Uzbekistan, and this is a photo of the Ark of Bukhara, which is the citadel in Bukhara that housed the emir. And Bukhara, is a very ancient city, and it was the capital of the Islamic Empire in the 15th century. And today, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and we're working within the center of Bukhara to try to, let me say, reconnect or revitalize the city. What happened, because it was a city on the Silk Trade route, and with a change of trading type, so moving to the sea or by airplane, the city really got disconnected. But it's extremely rich in craft. They do excellent pottery work, carpet making, woodwork, etc. And the importance for us is really to reconnect the city with the global design scene, like what's happening with Murano, and no longer just cater for the tourist, and try to elevate the craft to a different level. So here we're working at the center, 35,000 square meter area, And we have 16 buildings, I would say, in that district. So we're calling it the cultural district of Bukhara. We're revitalizing these buildings by introducing new programs for the local community of Bukhara, so that they have a space to operate in, as well as practice their craft, like artist studios, etc., that are not limited to their own environments, but allows for cross-disciplinary interaction. And I think that is very important. And we will host there in 2025, September next year, a Biennale of contemporary art. And I think that's interesting because it will also relink the city with a global audience. And the artists themselves will start to work with the local craftsmen, and that will help elevate the craft again.
So two different projects. So we saw a project in Dubai and another one in Bukhara. So how do you tailor your design principles to fit different contexts?
Yeah, I mean, this is where we really study the context extensively in detail. It's not about a one trip. I've been working in Central Asia for more than 20 years.
Wow.
So I started my career with Arata Isozaki in Japan, and we were doing 3 universities in Central Asia for the Aga Khan. So I was 23 or 24 years old, working in Central Asia, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Kazakhstan, and here I am again now,
in Uzbekistan.
25 years later, working in Uzbekistan. So I'm very familiar with the context, the climate, the culture, etc. So I feel, not as a foreigner, but really as a mediator and not as an architect. Because as I told you, in these kind of UNESCO World Heritage sites, it's important that we don't bring our egos to the projects and let the project itself speak of its own true nature. So that's very, very important. But here in Bukhara, what we're trying to do is also kind of reconnect the city together because of, we spoke about, layering, because of history, 3,000-year-old city, so it's layered on top of each other, and that creates, you see, disconnections. Here, the 𝗪𝗀𝗪𝗀 mosque, which you see on the right, is super disconnected from the entire context, and that's a 10th century building. So by working, just with the public realm, we're able to start, let's say, removing these boundaries and reconnecting the urban fabric together, allowing the space to become re-pedestrianized. Because cities of the past were all about pedestrian networks and connections.
Technical issues. Thanks, Bobby.
But today, the city, of course, it introduces the car. We're trying to remove the car, again, from this UNESCO World Heritage Site and just allow for full pedestrianized zones. And yesterday, as I walked in Athens, a lot of districts are pedestrianized. And this is what historical cities should be about, And from that city center, we're branching out now to identify cultural routes and other monuments on these cultural routes and start to connect them with the overall, let's say, vision of the city. And here you can see the Samanid Mausoleum. It's a 10th century structure that is the first brick-fired building in Central Asia. And it has 85 different bricklaying techniques on its facade. So how do you bring these monuments into cultural trails where, they become part of the journey through the city and you can experience them without having to renovate, restore, or work much on the building itself, but work on the infrastructure that connects all these monuments together and leave the monuments as structures by their own rights, right?
With so much history and culture in these city centers, how can you integrate newer structures, I would say?
Yeah, I mean, this, again, takes me to maybe the third structure that we're integrating into the project. That's a modernist structure that was built much later. And that's built by a Russian engineer called Shukov. Actually, he's the inventor of the double helix structure that is super famous today. And it was a water tower, and then with time, they didn't need a water tower anymore, so they turned it into a wedding venue, an elevated wedding venue.
Interesting choice of function, yeah.
So now we're taking back this kind of commercial program and giving it back to culture and recreating the tower or the water monument using glass bricks. So again, what you build, you have to build in extreme contrast. And I think that's why we go with glass brick, because if we try to mimic the local mud brick, it's, you know, we're not trying to hide our intervention. We need to give the old its own space and its own right, rather than try to blend with it and cause a confusion of what is old and what's new.
And not erasing the new architecture also.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, moving from here, I'll talk about the second phenomena that's the interest, is the interest in phenomena, which is natural light, wind, time, gravity, etc. So we have a lot of interest in that, and that takes me to the Jameel Art Center, which we did in Dubai. And here I want to refer to the pearlescent facade panels that we specifically created for this project. And these facade panels reflect the movement of light from the sun, and this can only exist in Dubai or a context similar to Dubai, because there it's 80% sunny, while putting this in Singapore would not work. It's 80% cloudy. So these panels really are in a constant dialogue with nature and a reflection of the sun and the movement of the sun. And you can see here also the high side lights that are north facing and bring into the exhibition spaces diffuse natural light, enhancing the exhibitions and not causing any distraction to the quality of space. The third principle is really the synthesis between architecture and landscape. We don't see them as two different disciplines.
No boundaries.
No boundaries at all. So to me, I'm a designer of space, and space consists of architecture and landscape cohesively together. And this is a famous painting by Bruegel, and it's titled Play of Kids. And you can see here the landscape or the outdoor space, the public realm, is the architecture or the space for the kids to play. Or a market in Riyadh, in Saudi Arabia, where you see the activity really part of the public realm and the external space, where landscape is as strong or is as powerful as architecture itself. For the Hayy Jameel project then in Jeddah, you know, we designed the whole facility around a single courtyard that's not only limited to one floor, but we see it as a tiered courtyard that goes to the second and third levels, allowing for interdisciplinary interaction together. And that was very important. And you can see here, you know, when there was a performance of an opera, people standing on all the different levels watching that, it becomes like an agora. So the building really, the outdoor space is a room also, is an urban room that's used equally as the interior spaces of the project itself. Similarly, we go into a very different type of project. Those were very cultural. This is a villa, a house for a person. And here, you know, where again we see inhabitation of space is really occupying a landscape more than occupying a clearly defined home, because we want to live in landscapes, obviously. And that's more pleasant for us than living in modern rooms, modern closed rooms. So we worked here with structure, and the beams you see are so deep, not because of aesthetics, but they carry the slabs that are free floating with 6.5-meter cantilever in all directions. And that allows for the opening of the house to the landscape. So the landscape completely comes inside. And there's no clear boundary, am I inside, am I outside? It just becomes this unique space that occupies the site. And this is a drone shot.
Yeah, and this is what architecture is actually about. We're understanding, again, bringing back these ideas always existed, but we're bringing back these ideas that it's a whole. It's not the landscape on its own. It's not the building on its own. The envelope. It's not the interior on its own. It's a whole space experience, right?
Right, right. We design experiences, and that's what and experiences that connect to our senses. So architecture is about connecting to your senses, and if it doesn't, then to me, it's not architecture. It's a commercial development or whatever. It's not about really producing designed architecture. Then I go to the 𝗙𝗍𝗍, which is architecture beyond functionality and program, and that again is about experience, because the modern world had to rationalize architecture, and define spaces very clearly. This is your bedroom. This is your living room. This is your kitchen. While in the past, we occupied space. I mean, it could be your bedroom and your living room. There was no clear definition. So for the Beirut Museum of Art, where they came with a very clear brief, with exhibition rooms that are enclosed and air-conditioned and all of that, and Lebanon is defined by the cedar trees and the trees, and just like Mediterranean context. And so we thought, why not design these terraces that are controlled through ETFE membranes under which art could be exhibited, and not through your standard exhibition white box typology. I mean, this was a competition we didn't win. I'm glad we didn't win, because unfortunate circumstances in Lebanon, this building would have popped like a balloon, I would say.
Yeah.
Starting with the Beirut explosion. But it's, again, designing architecture with a new vision or a new typology beyond the stereotypes of a white box versus, a clear function of this is your kitchen. But, I like cooking a lot, and you want to cook, you want interaction. You want to cook, you want to talk, you want to watch TV. So you want the house to be rather designed seamlessly with the landscape too. And you want to cook outside. Why do you want to cook inside?
Which brings us back to experiences.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then the diagram of form, rather a diagram of relations rather than diagram of form, and that's important. Where some architects design a sketch based on a form, we don't. We do relations. So I want this to be connected with that, and that leads to the form. It's not starting with the form, but starting with relations. And here in Heidi 3, we built this project from 83 recycled 40-foot high cube containers. And that, I think, leads into the second part, which is the future vernacular, where we're really interested in recycling industrial waste products. And the shipping container here these were all recycled, because Dubai has the largest port, one of the largest ports in the world, and they dispose of so many containers. So we took those and built this facility using these containers. It also speaks about the relationship between landscape and architecture. There's 50-50% in the plan. You can see it here that in and out are connected around these nice gardens that creates a seamless flow between all these functions or facilities.
Yeah.
Finally, we move into the future vernacular, which is really where my interest mostly lies. And this is about sustainability and the climate crisis we face today. So we have a lab in which we do a lot of material research and testing. And the lab, to me, is like the Mos Eisley Cafe in Star Wars. So it's a place where species from all over the planet come together to engage in dialogue and discussions. And, it's about multidisciplinary approaches. So we bring in material scientists, we bring in biologists, we bring in architects, we bring in contractors, fabricators, and it's very important to mix these disciplines together, because it's only where innovation starts to happen, yeah?
And the lab is not an independent entity from the design firm anyways.
They are spatially separated, but the team that work in the office work in the lab, and the lab and the team in the lab work in the office. So there's no separated team. So then the knowledge is continuously transferred between the two spaces.
What inspired you to start this lab initially, and also what inspired your interest in using industrial waste as a material in architecture? I really want to start with that.
Yeah, so that's the most important question, you know. So, you know, in 2018, 2019, I started thinking, okay, what's my responsibility as an architect in this climate crisis, okay?
Yeah.
And you can see the slide here. You know, today we're moving from a population of 7 billion to a population of 10 billion. And Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation report issued in 2019 at that time states that we need to build the equivalent of 1 New York City every month over the next 40 years to meet this exploding population. So imagine the amount of construction that needs to happen. And what is the responsibility of the construction industry in this climate crisis? In energy efficiency and energy waste, it is 40% responsible for pollution. And in terms of material extraction, we extract 40% of the planet's resources. So it's depletion of resources, you know. We are constantly eating from the planet. So grosso modo, we're responsible for 40% of this climate crisis. So today, what do I do as an architect in the 21st century? This was not a problem of the 20th century architect. And here, I love this photo. It was a photo that was taken of all the great modern architects, and it was Philip Johnson's birthday. And you can see in this photo, Zaha Hadid, Rem Koolhaas, everyone.
Peter Cook,
everyone. But what really, you know, captivates me in this photo is that they're all wearing the same suit, except Arata Isozaki having a slight differentiation with the bow tie, and Rem being a rebel, not wearing anything, bow tie, etc. But, you know, everyone comes from a very distinctive and different culture. So it got me thinking, why did they choose to wear the same costume? And, you know, how can we today in the 21st century define the new architect? And that was very important. And that what's got me started thinking. And of course, I participated in the Venice Biennale, and there you realize that in Europe, here the Philippines and the US also moving from Portland cement because of the climate crisis into wood, cross-laminated timber. But in the UAE, the vernacular architecture is coral. They built with coral. They took coral sections from the ground and used salt from the salt flats to glue these corals together, right? So can we go back to building this way? Impossible. I mean, you would kill all the marine life, and that's absolutely not acceptable. So I started thinking, what is the problem of Portland cement? And you quickly learn that the problem is in the binder. It's in the glue, and it's converting limestone to lime that releases CO2. So could I find a different binder? So then immediately I thought, okay, when they were gluing the corals together, they used salt from the salt flats of the UAE. And in the UAE, 5% of the local geography is made from salt flats. So could these salt flats really offer this solution of replacing lime as a binder in Portland cement? And, you know, salt flats are not a local phenomena, they're a global phenomena. I mean, they're available in many countries. This is in Ethiopia, and Siwa in Egypt, you know, is all built from salt flats of Siwa. It's an 800-year-old town that still stands, and they have exquisite resorts there, actually, that you can visit and have spa time, etc. Because, Salt is healthy too because you know it treats a lot of illnesses. And then again, my fascination with Star Wars, I learned that 𝗍𝗍𝗀𝗍 you know, 𝗍𝗍𝗀𝗍𝗂𝗍 was the lab's vision that Lars Homsted, his house is built from the salt flat.
Yeah.
I mean, of Tunisia. And that salt flats are carbon sinks. You know, 1 square meter of salt flat absorbs more CO2 than 1 square meter of rainforest. So then we should protect them. So can I really take the salt from salt flats to use as a binder? And that became a big no-no for me.
Because we're going back to the same issue that we started with.
Which is extraction.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I said, yeah, this is, I'm really shortcutting. But then I quickly realized that the UAE is the 3rd largest desalinator in the world. And today we have a problem with water, so desalination is a big thing. And the MENA region, Middle East and North Africa, is responsible for 50% of global desalination. So we have the equivalent of 5,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools every day in the UAE of salt that are thrown back into the sea. So, and causing an environmental disaster in the sea. So can we take this salt? And this is where we start, you know, again, my interest in industrial waste as a future vernacular. Because, I mean, in the past, vernacular architecture was material found in nature. This could work, but it's based on extraction mindset, right? So I'm going to cut the mountain to take the stone. It works with biomass, like wood, bamboo, etc. It works very well. But in cases of stone or
depends also on the regeneration process of these materials.
Yes, exactly. So then we took this brine and started trying to figure out how we can use it to build with it. Simple methods were just putting fabrics, and then they will crystallize, and then they could become structures. But those were soluble structures, and that was a problem, meaning that they could dissolve in water. And then we partnered up with a material research lab at NYU Abu Dhabi, and they helped us figure out that actually we can use magnesium oxide as a salt binder instead of lime to create cement that's insoluble. And then we created these cements that don't dissolve in water. And the beauty of that cement is that it has to absorb CO2 in order to gain its structural strength. And it absorbs CO2 through purely putting it next to any factory, diverting the emissions to the room where you put it for 2-3 days. And you can see here, I'll show a video where it's in the contractor's factory where one block is carbonated, one block is not carbonated. And you see the block that's not carbonated stays intact. The block that's non-carbonated shatters completely.
Does it get saturated at some point in CO2?
No, it continues to absorb even. So you keep it for 3 days, you remove it, but then it continues to absorb CO2 throughout its lifetime. So it's a carbon capturing material. And then for Venice, I mean, we wanted to build something that's the antithesis of modern architecture. So we thought, okay, why not ask students to imagine corals, draw the forms by hand, and then, you know, we have these modules that we can build with. So then the whole building process is not drawings, it's a manual of instructions. And that again, removes the architect or our understanding of what is an architect, what role does an architect do, and gives power back to the builder. So it's building through conversations that you can...
But it's also the scientist in this case.
Right.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay, and this is your project at Venice, at the Venice Biennale. So can you tell us a bit more about it, and also about the prototype that it was a prototype?
Yes,
right?
it was prototype 1, we called it. And so this is built from 2,000 modules that are all hand-drawn. Each one looks very different from the other. And we used, because you see, when you ask people to build on the spot without a drawing, means you need to also calculate structure, and it's a public project. So the Biennale needs a structural analysis and confirmation that this is not going to fall on people. So then we partnered with Tokyo University to create a digital structural model as we built to verify the stability. This was something very new to the Biennale, and it was a challenging process, but it was a very fun process. And you can see here that we reprogrammed devices from the gaming industry.
Yeah.
And the wrist device that you see them wearing in their hand means that they are within the structural model, or the model that's being projected as a hologram. I mean, it's a very complicated process, but it was
the Golden Lion for it.
It was a unique process. And you can see here that we are randomly choosing the modules as we build. And that, you know, we scan the model or create the structural model as we build. You can see it here in the video that I'll show you 1 second as the video moves here. You see they're scanning each module, and that module uploads onto the software. And Tokyo University is monitoring that live as we build. And then when they see a structural problem anywhere, they will stop us. And this is final structural analysis that we have for that model, which the Biennale needs to receive to say, okay, this is sound. And what's funny is that during the construction, the president of the Biennale will come in, shake it with his hand, and say, okay, that's good.
It's stable enough for us.
It's stable enough. But it shows you how innovation can help you.
Yeah.
You know, today we talk, oh, AI and this and that, but no, innovation can be a tool where it helps you rethink your process. And it's not a negative way of always thinking about these digital things. They can be your ally if you use them in the right way. And that's, I think, something that's very important to think about before criticizing innovation, I think.
But in this case, how scalable is this, like in terms of materials and in terms of technique, the techniques that you are experimenting with?
I mean, now this actually, the MGO cement prototype 1, we're working with a company called Partana. They're based out of the US and the Bahamas, where we are scaling this to produce an artwork in Saudi Arabia for Manal al-Doayan on a massive scale using the same brine material in construction. But again, it's being done as an artwork because there's so many parameters you need to prove for it to become a material that's allowed to be used in
construction,
in the construction of buildings or homes or things like that, you know.
So these are the first steps into maybe experimenting with this type of material.
Right, and I think it starts people building trust and understanding of these new ideas and innovations. And this moves me to the second prototype now that we just completed last month in Abu Dhabi. And again, it's inspired from coral forms because it's a vernacular architecture of the UAE. But here we wanted to show that our interest really is in industrial waste and not brine, because everyone thought, oh, you're the brine guy, and I was like, no, I was talking about industrial waste, and prototype 1 was about brine, but. So prototype 2 is about recycling of HDPE. So these are infrastructure water pipes that run in the city. So we took those and recycled them with palm fiber, mixing them with palm fiber to create a module. And it's an X-shaped module. Now all the modules, 2,000, are identical in this case. But yet the structure is designed, again, using innovation. We use softwares that are used to design airplane wings in order to calculate the complexity of such a structural form.
And that's a permanent installation now, right?
This is going to be a permanent pavilion in Abu Dhabi on the Corniche.
Wael, what are the main barriers to mainstream acceptance of industrial waste and architecture, in your opinion?
I mean, you know, the problem is that we as individuals look at waste as something, as my children would say, yucky, you know? And that, oh, how can I live in that? How can I, you know, use a plate that's from waste? That's not good. But I can tell you that we're recycling plastic at the lab that is hypoallergenic. So we're able to create panels that are from 100% trash that meet the standards of hospital rooms. So, you know, you get rid of all these kind of bacteria or whatever, these stigma that you have to waste completely. Again, using technologies that we have today, this becomes very easy. And I think it's more about our acceptance that waste, it doesn't mean trash.
Redefining what waste actually is in that sense.
Exactly. And it's something that we need to take back into the system if we are going to think in circular modes, right? Because I think modernism is about the linear. It's about consume, extract, and once you use it, you trash it. That's how the economy grows, right? It's about that. And this one is saying, no, let's
look at the circular system where we reuse,
recycle, upcycle, whatever.
Through innovation and with these techniques and with working with different, let's say, researchers, teams, manufacturers to actually create a new product out of waste, right? Right.
So the prototype one, you see, we worked with the university in Abu Dhabi, which is New York University of Abu Dhabi. We also worked with Tokyo University in Japan. So we're cross-cultural too. We're trying to engage cross-cultural. In this prototype, we worked with a fabricator in Taiwan. That's called Miniwiz, and they were able to give us all the technology and all the molds, etc., to be able to produce these modules and then bring that innovation and create a local platform. So next step, we're able to produce these locally. Because again, you know, either you think if you want to be an idealist, I believe you do nothing, because you're always, you know, too concerned with what the outcome will be and if it's okay. But you need to be pragmatic about things, you know. And maybe I can't produce it today, but if I can produce it next year, that's a plus. So why not take the win in that way?
So we talked a lot about the sustainability aspect of this future vernacular, but I really want to ask you also about what it means for architectural identity.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's very, very important as a question. And I think, you know, we're in a crisis today of trying to define who we are because we all started looking the same. Of course, I mean, we've lost to modernism in our dress, in our food. No, food, I would say we still hold our cuisines dear to heart. But in architecture, we've lost. I mean, our cities look exactly the same. I go to Tokyo, you go to Sydney, you go to Singapore, you go to Dubai, exactly the same.
Yeah.
There's no differences. Steel, glass, concrete. So then identity becomes a problem because then, you know, how do we define identity? We think, oh, you know, in Dubai, what they do is put an arabesque pattern on the glass as a sticker, and they think, oh, this becomes local. That's not identity. You know, we know that's not identity. So we need to really have our cities reflect our identity, not because we like the way we look, but once they reflect our identity, they become sustainable to the climate. Because, you know, when you build something that is from your context to for your context, then it's going to work sustainably with your context, right? So if you look at the vernacular architecture of Greece or Italy or Lebanon, these houses, pre-MEP, pre-air conditioning, pre-whatever, you know,
worked. In their context, yeah.
They worked. So they can work. They can work. It's just we need to go back and redefine the system. And this system is about internationalism. We need to get rid of that system, right? And that system is the fault of the 20th century.
On that note, before finishing up, let's open the floor for questions and see if someone wants to ask anything and wants to engage with Wael. Anyone has a question? Anything? I'll let you think about it, and I'll ask you one last one. Well, I really want to see also, I want to ask you about your upcoming projects. What are the ones that you are most excited about in terms of, not just in terms of applying these principles and materials, but also in terms of your philosophy, the six philosophy principles?
What we're doing now, and it's a great project that I'm very proud of and excited to see completed, is we're doing the design district of Abu Dhabi, which is Miza. It's a warehousing district for the port of Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
Again, these were sheds, steel structures that used to exist for storage of all the materials and goods that came into the warehouse. And so we're repurposing these to become artist studios, workshops, cinemas, etc., and give the local community a space from which they can operate especially for design. I mean, or focused on the design fields. And that's now under construction. Phase 1 should be completed by, I think, the mid of 2025, towards the end of 2025. Again, I think this talks about, trying today to repurpose as much as possible. Or if we are demolishing, in some cases, some warehouses, we take the steel and we reuse it. Exactly, in the building of the new structures. And I think, again, given the context of the UAE, where you don't have wood, you don't have the luxury of wood, you don't have the luxury of bamboo, you don't have the luxury of other biomass-based material, we need to reuse or recycle as much as possible, and that's the only way forward.
Yeah, and that's one project. I know that there are a lot of others.
There's a lot of others, sure. But I have a lot of NDAs signed on them too.
Okay, so going back to the audience, if someone has a question for Wael, now is the time for it.
There's a question there.
There.
Hi.
Hello.
My name is tAS. I'm an architect. We all understand the concept of sustainability in vernacular architecture when it's in a small scale.
I can't hear you.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yes.
Now I can hear you, yeah.
I'm saying my name is tAS. I'm an architect. I have been into a lot of the vernacular architecture of Greece. We all understand it, how it works, because it's from the materials based there. That's why they produced it. But it works very good in a small scale, as they produced it for their own needs. Now that the cities grow so big, how can sustainability grow within the larger scale? How can this, because I see that you have tried to address it in bigger projects. Is it possible, you think, to actually have sustainability in large scale?
Yeah, I think here you're speaking about especially on the use of materials, right?
Mostly, yes.
True, and that's why I start with about the population growth, right? So we're moving from 7 billion to 10 billion. Vernacular architecture worked at such small scale, but again, here I'm saying vernacular architecture is not the way forward unless it's bio-based. Like bamboo or wood means that it can regenerate or rejuvenate, but it cannot work if it's like on stone, because you're still in the mindset of extracting.
Yes,
and this is where I introduce the idea of industrial waste moving forward.
Okay.
So I believe industrial waste
can be the new material.
Yeah, because I mean, it is materials produced by our cities, and it's found in our cities. And it's abundant. Only I was giving the example of reject brine from desalination water. On a daily basis, you can fill up 5,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools of brine, salt, that are thrown back into the sea. So if you take that material, we could do, we did a small, but create a factory that can start producing precast panels for fabrication of houses.
So local economies should actually get into thinking how this should be reused and get it into production. Okay.
I did a quick calculation for the brine alone. We believe we can immediately replace 25% of the cement market. That's a great start. I mean, and I know for a fact that we're going to be desalinating more and more going forward. Water is a huge issue globally.
Yes, it will become.
So you're going to have more brine. What do you do with the brine?
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mirto.
I was answering how many this prototype modules have?
2,000.
Thank you.
It has 2,000 modules. They are identical, but they are different in the amount of palm fiber in each. So you see the color difference in them is the quantity or the percentage of palm fiber, and the reason is that the palm fiber gives it additional strength. So the base has more because it carries the load of the upper units, and as you go up, they become lighter because then there's no load on the higher modules.
Thank you so much.
There's someone. I think someone at the back. Okay, so I think we can wrap this up well. Thank you for this inspiring presentation. You've given us so much to reflect on, and also for you showed us the potential of industrial waste, and thank you for defining future vernacular.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Wael, for being with us.
Thank you,
and yes, please, a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you.